What's up, y'all? T Brown 31 here with J Bot the Great. We're back with another episode of the Last Word podcast. As we wind down the NFL season, we got a whole lot to talk about from a wild Week 15. What's coming up on the show?
We're reacting to the Bengals' big comeback in the second half against the Buccaneers, the Vikings' crazy comeback against the Colts, and then we'll look ahead to Week 16 in the NFL.
All right, sounds good. So, as always, timestamps are going to be down below for each topic. Check those out if you want. With that being said, we got to start off with another crazy game with the Jaguars getting a big win over the Cowboys in overtime, 42-34 on a game-winning pick six.
Yeah, so this week was a big week for comebacks, a lot of upsets potentially, although the aforementioned Bengals one, not much of an upset there. I believe they were favored. This one definitely a big upset. Cowboys, 10-win team, definitely not expected to lose to the Jags. They're a crazy push to try to make the playoffs right now. So let's look at that on paper. The Clemson duo goes crazy in this game for the most part. Once the Jaguars got hot, at least Trevor Lawrence goes 27 for 42. 318 yards, 4 touchdowns, and only one pick. He did rush for 21 yards. ETN, however, led in rushing with 103 yards on 19 carries. But Jamal Agnew was behind him with 52 yards on 3 carries, a little more efficient. The Jaguars were able to break into the end zone on the ground, however. But the air game, as noted by Trevor's 318 yards, quite dominant. Zay Jones being the most dominant there, getting 6 receptions for 109 yards and 3 touchdowns. 3 of the 4 of Trevor's, he and Zay Jones just had a really good connection that day. Christian Kirk doing pretty well as well, getting 92 yards on 6 receptions. But Marvin Jones was the other Jaguar to bring in the other air TD. As I mentioned, Travis and Trevor did pretty well once they were hot, but they both did end up fumbling, and Trevor's was actually a little later into the game. So not the prettiest thing. Regardless, Rayshon Jenkins was able to pick off Dak Prescott twice, with one of them being that game-ending pick six in overtime, much more important than the other, but both very helpful. For the Cowboys, Dak goes 23 for 30, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, both to Rayshon Jenkins, as we said. He also rushed for 20 yards. Tony Pollard led the team in rushing with 75 yards, but it was Zeke who was able to get into the end zone for a touchdown on just 58 yards. I say just 58. That's still pretty good. CeeDee Lamb led the Cowboys in the air with 126 yards, but never actually found the end zone. Noah Brown was able to find it twice on 49 yards, and Peyton Hendershot had one 20-yard reception, also resulted in a touchdown. Donovan Wilson and Micah Parsons to recover those fumbles from Travis and Trevor, and then Deron Bland was also able to pick off Trevor Lawrence. Pretty good defensively from them at first, but they ended up kind of falling apart. So yeah, Cowboys dominate until the Jags start to kind of find their flow. It somewhat, stays kind of competitive. Dak was able to throw another touchdown to get it to take the lead again. Jags get the ball back. Trevor Lawrence fumbles, and it looks like the Cowboys are going to put it in the bag, but they quickly get the ball right back to the Jaguars. They march down and get that game-tying field goal. It goes to overtime, and then Dak throws that pick six to Rayshon Jenkins. That ends up being a game loser, and it's been a topic of controversy since Sunday when the game occurred, as people argued whether it was on Dak or Noah Brown, as it hit Noah Brown kind of right in the hands, and he bobbled it straight to Rayshon Jenkins. So kind of a, which one do you want to go on those? But either way, the Jags do get the win, and it's the first time they beat an NFC team since 2018, which, if I'm not wrong, is the year they went to the playoffs with Blake Bortles. So that's definitely something that they'll be excited for.
Yeah, it might have been like the year before, 2017, 2018, something like that. But yeah, it's been a while, and you can definitely say without a doubt that this is the Jaguars' best game in a while against a legit team like the Cowboys. Not saying that the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders right now, because they're not really looking like it right now. But the Cowboys are still a pretty good team. So for the Jaguars to be able to come back in the second half like they did against them, pretty impressive. And you mentioned this at the very beginning of the year, whenever the Jaguars started out pretty well, that you thought that they could possibly win the division. I said, all right, let's slow your roll. And the Jaguars ended up faltering for, most of the season up until like the last 5 or 6 games. While the Titans, they were going crazy. They won like 6 straight games or whatever after that, first couple of weeks until they beat the Raiders. So I was like, okay, they're kind of falling back to earth now. But now, as the Titans have faltered, only 1 game up on the Jaguars at 7-7, the Jaguars once again are possibly, they're not possibly in it, but they are in the division race for the AFC South title and a playoff spot. Now, you still got to play them, and we'll talk about this later on when we talk about the scenarios. You still have to play them later this season, and again, you're already down one game, so it's not like it's going to be super easy, but it's completely possible. And playing a game against a team like Dallas, who just last week could have very easily lost to the Houston Texans, and that was probably considered a trap game for them. You come into this week playing against a team like Jacksonville that has been hot, but you're still expecting to win after you had that trap game last week. Dallas, they come up pretty hot. I mean, they fumble on that first possession for Jacksonville. The Cowboys able to get a touchdown out of it. And then the next two drives after that are touchdowns for the Cowboys as well. So now they're already up 21-7 at the half. And I'm thinking at this point, Cowboys are playing pretty well. They're getting long drives, 10 play drives for 86 yards and a touchdown, 11 plays for 66 yards and a touchdown. They're playing Cowboy football. They're running the ball well. They're throwing it well. And it seemed like they were, rolling until we got to the second half. And even though there was an interception by Trevor Lawrence in the second half on their second possession, at that point, that's pretty much when they flip the switch, I should say. Because at that point, they were able to get a touchdown, touchdown, touchdown on 3 straight possessions, while the Cowboys had a turnover and a punt in between those. And once again, we see a bad Dak interception. That one, it didn't. He had pressure on him for sure, but it didn't really seem like it was affected the ball too much. That was just a bad throw, really. And you were backed up. So it literally took the Jaguars not a whole lot to be able to go right down, score a touchdown, and they were down 27-10. And just like that, they're only down 27-24 after those 2 touchdowns by the Jaguars on very short drives. So the Cowboys, that's really been the only thing that's the main thing that's really been affected in the past few weeks is just the turnovers. I didn't want to put too much stock into everybody saying, oh, Dak's throwing way too many turnovers. It happens. Because you got other quarterbacks that are top tier quarterbacks that are better than him that are throwing picks. But that one hurt him. And especially when you're deep in your own territory, you turn around and let the Jaguars get a touchdown. It's a problem. And now you've let this game come way closer than it should have been based off of how they played in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the picks are probably the biggest thing you can look at for this game, right? Because stuff starts going well for the Jaguars, but the Cowboys still have control. They have the lead. All they have to do is keep adding to that lead, and you probably have a good chance at keeping the game away from overtime, away from a loss in general. You can probably close it out against a pretty tough, resilient Jaguars team. Instead, they throw that interception really close, like you said. It ends up becoming a touchdown just 4 plays later for the Jaguars. Now they're down 3. Then you go 3 and out. They score again on a 75-yard drive. Then you finally score. You take the lead, and you force them to fumble. You get them to fumble, and everything's going well. And then you go 3 and out, and don't even move a yard, which is just really bad. So you had to punt after a 30-second possession, and in just a minute, the Jags are able to get downfield, 41 yards, nail that field goal, and go to overtime. And then once again, they give you another chance, right? They get the ball first in overtime. They go 3 and out. They can only get 7 yards. They only eat up about a minute of time. The game's in your hands. That big interception comes in. Definitely not great on either Dak or Noah Brown. I don't really want to point blame too much at either one of them. I think it's kind of a, maybe Dak didn't throw that into the best scenario, but also it did get to Noah's hands. So at that point, good on Dak for threading the needle over there. But you got to be sure it's catchable. Is it catchable to throw it in that risky of a situation? You can argue about all that. The point that remains, however, is that the Jaguars once again hand them a chance to, let's close this one out in this scare and survive another AFC East team or AFC South team, sorry. And they're not able to do that. They're not able to close it down, and the Jags get that huge pick six. And, it's game ending. So yeah, Dallas gets frightened by one AFC South team, turns around. And looks like they're going to stop another one, but instead Jacksonville gets that win, and now the Cowboys have to move on and play the division leader next week in Tennessee, which may be positive for Jacksonville if Jacksonville is able to overcome the Jets next week. Dallas is definitely more favorable against Tennessee, but at the same time, we've now seen in back-to-back weeks that the Cowboys have some pretty distinct weaknesses that can come up. You can put them in a scary situation for sure. So sorry, I don't think they play the Cowboys Titans next. Actually, they play the Eagles next. I'm pretty sure, but still, they've got to match up with the Titans eventually, which is going to be huge for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this game, I think, doesn't really make the Cowboys look fraudulent in any way. Um, by doing that, I think we'd be putting too little credit to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've been good this season. I did backtrack a little bit when they started to falter and thought, okay, maybe they won't lead the division, but I see the talent there. But instead, they've actually been able to kind of surge forward a little bit and have a good chance at taking that division. And the Cowboys are good. They clinched their own playoff spot. So they've got really nothing else to worry about as far as getting into the playoffs. I'm sure they like to finish with the best record possible. But yeah, we see that the Cowboys are a human team. They're 10-4. It's a really good record, but we know that there are ways to beat them, and probably more ways than we've seen in a team like the Eagles, who are going to be the top dog in that NFC area. And yeah, this is a great game. The Jacksonville Jaguars, great offense for them. Some pretty confident defense for them in the second half to hold the Cowboys down to 7 points in the second half. It's just really good. The Cowboys have a good offense. They have a good defense, and the Jaguars showed a lot of resilience and a lot of strength to come out and get a win like that after being down so bad at halftime.
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys, they got that game against the Titans. That'll be Thursday Night Football a week from this Thursday. Jaguars play this Thursday against the Jets. So big games for AFC South teams there. And then Titans and Jaguars, that's going to be the last week game of the season for both of those teams. So a lot going on for them. As far as the Cowboys, going back to just the end of this game, again, I mean, you have to give credit to the Jaguars defense for stepping up. Barely allowing any points in the second half compared to the first half. Of course, getting turnover, the interception by Dak. And I think that's pretty much how you're going to have to beat the Cowboys. You can, not saying you want to let these guys get up on you like they did against the Jaguars, 21-7 to start. But if you do let them get up, just try to get some turnovers. I don't really see Zeke or Tony Pollard fumbling much. And not to put this on Dak again, but he's been throwing interceptions a whole lot since he came back, especially the last few weeks. So if you're able to force interceptions, and if your offense can get going in that defense, if you're able to run all over that defense, because that's been a problem for the Cowboys defense this season, is the run game. And Travis Etienne, we had 100 yards just on 19 carries, and Jamal Agnew had 52 on just 3. So if you're able to run over that defense the way they did, as well as getting a turnover here and there and deep in their own territory, and you're able to turn that into touchdowns rather than field goals, that's probably going to be your formula to beat them. And the offensive line, it's kind of iffy still, and forcing Dak to just make these throws. Receivers got to be better too, because that interception in overtime, that was going to Noah Brown because it hit him in the hands. And that's not like one that just, barely hit him. That was like a little bit too far to the outside or something like that. Hit him on the hands. He could have caught it, bounced off, and that caused you to lose. I mean, literally, it was end of the game right there. And all they needed at that point was a field goal because obviously the Jaguars, they did nothing on their first drive in overtime. And I'm thinking at that point, all right, all they need is a field goal. Cowboys, they can get down there, they can turn it around and score. But that's not what happened. And even going back to the end of the fourth quarter, after you score, you force a fumble by Trevor Lawrence. Michael Parsons recovers that one. I'm thinking, all right, the game should be over at that point. You got barely over a minute left, but you literally do nothing on your 3 plays. At first play, you get nothing by Zeke. Your next play, you run it, you get nothing. And then third down, you throw it deep, incomplete. So now you stop the clock. You didn't advance the ball at all. So now they get the ball right back, literally 30 seconds later. That allows them to go down and get a field goal. Send it into overtime in the first place, where obviously you turn it over on the last play. So Cowboys, defense got to step up there. We've been hearing all season, at least, the first 2/3 of the season about how great this defense was. They stepped up while Cooper Rush was there. Well, they need to step up now. Dak has to limit the turnovers. And obviously, since now they're 3 games behind the Eagles with only 3 weeks left, they play the Eagles this weekend. Even if they beat them, it's probably going to be a lock for them to be a wild card team. I just don't see the Eagles losing 3 more times. So they're probably going to be stuck in that 5 seed. So it's really, a matter of, do you really want to be, if the Eagles just win one more game, do you really want to be wasting your players' energy and the possibility of injury in that last week?
Yeah, I think just to close up here for the Jaguars, I want to give a little bit of credit. One to the Jacksonville O line. They've allowed the fewest sacks all season, I believe. Only allowed one in this game. Um, there's still some issues here and there, but just to be able to hold off sacks, it's pretty good, especially against a defense like Dallas's. And just from what we've seen and the quickness that Jacksonville plays with when they're in these situations against Dallas, against Baltimore, the Jacksonville Jaguars are definitely a formidable team and one to watch out for in a playoff scenario, where obviously playoff intensity changes a lot of things. But we know that this team is capable of these quick comebacks, these quick field drives to get down and either force overtime or just get the game winner. We know that Doug Peterson has been in the highest level, has won at the highest level, and is capable of coaching a team at that level and plays quite aggressively with this young, kind of spry Jacksonville Jaguars team. So, just big credit to them for the hustle that they play with in these not so great situations. The defense for stepping up and the O line for taking care of business most of the season. So definitely not the prettiest record, 6-8, but they control their own destiny. They're right where they probably need to be. I think we have an interesting playoff picture to look at in the AFC South throughout the rest of the season.